often stop and get out of the car and just look. It is such a vast, open area. It's magnificent to see. I've never seen the ocean, but I imagine this is something like the power and the magnificence of the ocean beating on the shore.
Western Kansas. There is a certain timelessness out here. The land, as always, is rugged and starkly beautiful. And living here has always presented special challenges to its people. St. Luke's Episcopal Church, Scott City. Father David Krause is here every Sunday morning. And 2 Sunday afternoons a month, he travels 40 miles of dusty back roads to a little town called Russell Springs. Once a stop on the Butterfield stage, once bustling with 2,000 people, Russell Springs has been dying for decades. Now it has fewer than 50 people, a post office, and an Episcopal church.
I don't think that Russell Springs will ever die.
People like Marge Wright, who has lived here all her life, keep it going.
I get along very well if there's 10 there or if there's 50, but some people can't.
At St. Francis, the entire congregation can kneel for communion at once.
The bread of heaven. God hasn't abandoned Russell Springs. He's just doing something different with it. We are going to be right there with those people till the very end, and probably with them past the very end.
This is the Episcopal Church in Western Kansas. And so is this. Christ Cathedral, the Bishop's Church in Salina. This inspiring edifice was built as a memorial to a missionary priest. That is fitting, since the growth of the Episcopal Church in Kansas has always relied on missionary work. Thomas Hubbard Vale became the first bishop of Kansas in 1864. He spent night after night on the prairie, cradled in a buffalo robe, in his quest to establish the Episcopal Church here.
Loving the people and loving the church, it was just natural to bring the church to the people.
Almost 70 years later, Father Bob Mize found himself in a similar position. Just 1 year out of seminary, he was chosen to join a new mission project in the Hayes area.
And I very unexpectedly found myself as the head of that associate mission, with a commission to plant the church where the church isn't. And the 3 of us, young clergy of the church, had 10 counties in western Kansas, with only 2-3 church buildings in all that part of the state. And so we had to make use of one-room schoolhouses and storefronts and people's homes. But we did have a string of missions that were established. A few of them are still going. Others have not taken permanent root.
St. Andrew's in rural Hayes is testimony to the work of that young Father Bob, who went on to become an African bishop. Today, it still has the original amenities, and it still has a Father Bob. People drive miles out from the city to enjoy the special presence you can feel here in this remote mission church. Like many Episcopalians, Audrey Riley feels a special connection with her church too. Her grandfather founded the Church of the Transfiguration in Bennington.
He wanted it to be on this corner, but this corner belonged to a staunch Methodist lady, and she wouldn't sell it to him because she knew what he would use it for.
So he had a friend buy the land, who in turn sold it to the diocese. Much of the church was paid for by the handiwork of the ladies.
They sewed and did fancy work and quilts and things, and then on Saturday nights they had ice cream socials out on the lawn of the church. and they sold ice cream to make money, and they would make amounts like $15 and $20, and it's with money like that that they paid for this church.
Easier done when windows like this cost $30, purchased by the menfolk in honor of their wives. And the Ladies' Guild bought this beautiful Transfiguration window for $125. This little church in Logan, built in 1890, was closed for years. Now it lives again as an Episcopal church. This is the story of the Episcopal Church in western Kansas. Its very life depends on the commitment of its people. The people determine if churches thrive or if they quietly fade. It's a big diocese, 30 churches in 50,000 square miles. And it's never static, always changing. Father Lou Catching's job is to try to serve the needs of communities in the southeast region of the diocese.
Hey, Geneva! Of course, these towns can't afford a priest, all by themselves. I'm doing a job that would have probably, certainly at one time had 2 priests and maybe even 3 doing it. But then that's the way ministry is now, especially in the rural areas of the country.
All the work that she's done, all for your glory. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Another regional ministry is in the southwest corner of Kansas. Attracted by the challenge and the spirit of the people, Father Jeff Champlin came from Connecticut to serve liberal and surrounding communities.
There's a kind of struggle in hanging on in a hard corner of the world with very small communities as small churches. But I think what's happened through that is, and I'm struck by this again and again, that the Episcopal churches have gained a kind of strength at the core.
These churches can grow. St. John's Ulysses has grown without a resident priest, and they've done it because they know who they are. They know they are baptized people with a call to mission and ministry, and they're not afraid to say so, and they are out in the town of Ulysses in their daily lives, witnessing to the gospel and the good news. I think that can be done anywhere.
The vitality of congregations may wax and wane at times, but some things in the Episcopal Church don't change. Indeed, that's one of its greatest attractions.
When you come into this setting, you know that what you are participating in is one of the most ancient rites that humanity has ever developed. The church rites go back 2,000 years and the liturgies have their basis in very ancient experiences, always which have had great meaning to people.
The biggest single drawing card of the Episcopal Church is worship, liturgy. We do that better than anybody else does it. We really do.
The liturgy unites all Episcopalians and brings them home.
The liturgy really develops spirituality in people. If you come to the liturgy on a regular basis and you suddenly realize that you're able to pray, it's because that's what's supposed to happen.
The centerpiece of the liturgy is the Holy Eucharist, communion.
Communion is wonderful. It's one of those, it's the mystery of mysteries.
What happens at communion is a strange thing. I'll tell you one thing I think that happens. I think clocks stop and watches stop. I never look at my watch when I'm celebrating the Eucharist because I have a superstition that my watch is not running, because we're caught up in eternity.
The body of Christ, the bread of heaven.
The experience of worshiping in an Episcopal community is very powerful. It draws a large number of adult converts.
The Episcopal Church welcomes all kinds. You can think what you want to think. And we don't have to agree with the person sitting next to us in church. We don't have to think the same thing that they're thinking.
If you chuckle when you see these ads, you probably feel right at home in the Episcopal Church. We have a good sense of humor. The vitality of the Episcopal Church depends on people getting together in community to worship. And you can't be a bump on a log here. The liturgy relies on participation, which creates change, and not just spiritual. We take the spirit of participation out into our communities as well. The creation of the Kansas Cosmosphere and Space Center in Hutchinson is just one example. We're dreamers, we're doers, we're leaders. Two of the most impressive accomplishments of the Diocese of Western Kansas have national reach and significance. In 1945, Father Bob Mize opened the St. Francis Home in Ellsworth. Most of the boys had jail records. Father Bob's goal was to treat them with decency and introduce them to God, to heal them in body, mind, and spirit. Today, the St. Francis Academy has campuses in Kansas, New York, and Mississippi. They have helped thousands of young people with conduct disorders through their system of psychiatric hospitals and treatment programs, including this innovative wilderness therapy. Lives change here. Over 70% of St. Francis program graduates go on to lead normal, happy lives. That's the highest documented success rate in the country for this type of problem. And the majority of donors to this nationally recognized organization are from the Episcopal Church in Western Kansas. Caring for youth has been a concern of our diocese since the last century. In 1887, St. John's Military School was founded by the Episcopal bishop and a group of Salina businessmen. St. John's is an alternative environment for young men who need structure and patience. It's an opportunity for a fresh start when boys, for some reason, have not done well elsewhere. The cadet schedule is packed with academics, activities, and spiritual work. Every area of their character and personality is explored and directed. St. John's is not just a school. It's a home, a community, and a church serving students from all over the country. Another institution enjoyed and supported by the diocese is Camp Bakusa. This conference center near Stockton is on the edge of Webster Reservoir. Many happy hours have been spent here for camps and retreats. As important as these regional and national projects are to the diocese, great tribute should be paid to local churches who are finding so many ways to live their faith, to participate in their communities, and make a real difference. This is Garden City. Famous for its beef packing industry, Garden City has become a primary destination for Asian refugees. Asians make up 10 to 15% of the population. Welcoming the stranger, getting the refugees settled, is the task of Episcopal Migration Ministries and people like Emily Barkley. Emily finds sponsors who take responsibility for the first 30 days after a refugee family has arrived. This man, once a captain in the South Vietnamese Army, spent years in hard labor, separated from his family.
Our objective is not to make them dependent on us. We don't bring them here to take care of them. We don't bring them here to nurture them. We bring them here to give them the opportunity to make a new life after living in a terrible situation for so many years where they've come from.
Common household items destined for garage sales are very precious to these new friends.
Ironing board for you.
Yeah,
oops, watch
very
out for
nice.
that. Okay.
Episcopal Migration Ministries has helped settle hundreds of people in southwest Kansas.
It's just nice to be able to give to somebody who doesn't have anything else. And it's so effortless that it's, I don't know, it's just kind of fun.
On the other edge of the diocese, members of Christ Cathedral in Salina are busy giving new life to this former dean's residence. Ashby House is a shelter for the homeless, a place where families can live in an emergency for up to 30 days. The shelter fills what was a major hole in Salina's social services. Ashby House is an ecumenical project, with the Episcopal Church serving as catalyst. That is often the case. Here at St. Michael's in Hayes, the church is providing office space for a statewide ecumenical program called the Interfaith Rural Life Committee. This group works on developing ways to help farmers, ranchers, and rural communities help themselves. In Norton, Trinity Church is home to God's Pantry, an emergency food supply for people who have somehow fallen through the cracks of the social services system.
We saw the need and filled it. We were really reluctant at first to get started because we were afraid to fail. And I think that was the biggest hurdle that we had to cross. Once we discovered the fact that we could do it and that with God's help and the community's help, it would be a success, then the program just took off on its own.
This is an ecumenical program with wide community support, which was initiated and housed in the Episcopal Church. Trinity Church is a beautiful building that has watched the numbers in its congregation dwindle. Don Johnson is convinced that community involvement is the key to a growing church.
The problems we're experiencing here in Norton are not unique to Norton by any stretch of the imagination. I say all of the Northwest Kansas is experiencing the same thing. We have a shortage of members. We need to become involved in the community and go out and recruit more members because our membership rolls are declining instead of increasing. And as long as this is taking place, we're going to struggle as a church.
Struggle is nothing new to people in western Kansas, and a moment frozen in time may seem like a loss, but in fact, it's God's invitation to us to grow. We can accept that invitation by sharing our spirit with others. It's called evangelism.
Why should we do it? Because Jesus said to do it. That's one reason. Another reason is because it's our nature to do it. All the world loves a lover. And if you're in love with God, one of the things you do is share that love, don't you see? And part of the way you do that is in terms of inviting people to church. And that's the key to the whole thing. One invites people to the community. And then if the community itself is lively and vibrant and warm and welcoming, then the people that you invite will stay.
And if we can get young people interested in the church and get them to come to church, then we know we have a future.
The Spirit works with the people. Congregations who have a few people that are really caught up in the Spirit will live forever. But it all centers on the Holy Spirit's work in the lives of the people, the enthusiasm to be filled with God. That's the secret to the whole thing.
We've come from horse and wagon to station wagon. We've changed lives. We've touched hearts. If it hasn't been done before, we are inspired to do it. We're the Episcopal Church in western Kansas, a community filled with infinite spirit.